Ladies and gentlemen, registered officers, Douglas Blackstock.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and I guess before I start, I do have more than one suit and one shirt and one tie. I don't know how this happened by coincidence, but it's nice to be here. Well, good morning. You've now heard who I am and my role, but for some of you, you will know little about my organisation. We're not as famous or infamous as Ofsted or Eston, but we perform a role that is UK-wide in every university and college of higher education or provider of higher education across the UK. We are the UK's independent body responsible for safeguarding academic standards and improving and assuring quality of UK higher education wherever it is delivered in the UK and elsewhere. We make sure that students working towards a UK qualification get the higher education that they're entitled to expect. And when I say elsewhere, it's because as well as the 2 million students studying for a UK degree in the UK, there are 700,000 students studying for UK qualifications delivered overseas. And if you look at your own university's strategy, you'll see what a global and international player your own institution is with partnerships around the world. I was pleased to be invited here today by Hannah, who's a member of QA's Student Advisory Committee, which I'll mention a bit more about later, to speak here at this Student Reps Conference. Student engagement, student involvement, student participation is something I care about passionately and have done for a very long time. And there's some reasons behind that. I was in a Twitter exchange the other night with Bronwyn Jeffries, who is a journalist in the BBC, about people who have dropped out getting second chances. I am forever a statistic of failure at the University of Strathclyde, because I went there in 1979, leaving school, age 17, could have gone at 16, but delayed a year, chose the wrong course, didn't adapt properly, and dropped out within 6 months. I learned a lot in life. I then changed careers and tried other things before finally someone in a job interview said to me, I'm not going to give you this job, I would like to, but you should go back to university and get a degree. Because once you've got that degree, no one can ever take it away from you. So I went to what is, as you've heard now, Glasgow Caledonian, then Glasgow College of Technology in 1984 to study public administration. Very early on, I got involved with the Students' Union. I became a rep. I was on the Student Representative Council. I was involved in going out and recruiting student reps and trying to get people involved in making sure that the academic experience was maintained, but also that the Students' Union as an organisation was focused on issues that students cared about. That was a tough job, persuading people to go to course committees or academic boards where they didn't think people would treat them seriously, where they had to read complex papers and understand complex issues, instead of it being a discussion focused about what our students experience, what's working well, what can we improve, and can you bring in the views of our students. And we've moved a long way from there because of some of the things we've done as a whole higher education sector in the last 30 years. Quite how it happened, I don't know, but I ended up becoming president of the Students' Association. Being Scottish, we don't have student unions, we have associations. We just like to be awkward. And I had my first opportunity to contribute to both internal and external quality assurance for reasons I'll come back to later, might be relevant to you. Because I was involved with my fellow sabbatical officer in preparing a student submission to an external review panel from an organisation then known as the Council for National Academic Awards. And some of the academic staff, you may remember them very fondly, or not. And we had an opportunity to go and meet the principal and present our draft submission of what we thought this team of external academic experts should know about students' views of the institution. And I then went on to be the president of the National Union of Students in the West of Scotland for 2 years, and ended up as deputy president of the National Union of Students in Scotland. And what I did largely in those roles, apart from campaigning against lots of things which, back in those days, we didn't have student loans. We didn't have tuition fees, and we were not keen on them. I did all that sort of stuff. But actually what I really did was going out to smaller colleges to help them develop student representative structures so that their students could get a voice in their own institutions. And as been mentioned, I ended up moving around into management based on I'd previously been a manager in a commercial company before I'd gone back to be a student. And I ended up working at the University of Greenwich, University of West of England and the University of Warwick. And saw different experiences and did different things, but ultimately got to the point where we had nationally created an organisation called Student Activities and Development in Action, where we had developed programmes around course reps at the University of Greenwich, funded by government money on it, enterprise and higher education, to try and develop school-based and academic-based structures where students could really play a role in shaping their own curriculum, shaping their own learning, and beginning to move to a situation where students were partners in an institution, where students were co-producers, if you like, of their own learning. And again, you know, I just by circumstance and fortune of the organisation I now work for, being based in the city where I live in Gloucester, I went to QA as a director of administration. The reason I chose QA, the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education, because I'd also dealt with them. In those days, we used to do things called subject reviews, but also academic audit, where I had helped prepare student union officers and student reps to meet these external panels to share our views of what could improve in the institution. And I wanted to work in an organisation that was doing something to support students achieve all that they could do. So I went to QA, and one of my priorities became quickly developing QA strategy and activity to improve student engagement, mostly in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but across the UK and internationally. In 2002, we introduced for the first time in England and Wales for QA what we call the student submission. And that's where students, if they wanted to, can do it anonymously, or it can be private, sorry. They can share their views about the institution when our teams come in to visit. Now, we reserve that in case there's a poor relationship, but we encourage student unions and student reps to have a positive relationship with their institution. They demonstrated what we found through those processes that have now been running for 15 years, that students have a deep understanding and a deep passion about their own universities, and they want them to succeed, and they want their voices to be heard. We published last year a long-term view of what we've learned from students and what they've told us about the issues that matter, such as feedback on their assessment, about getting the right type of contact and engagement with their institutions, about the right type of facilities, but also that students increasingly are being listened to and being involved at every level in institutions about the performance of the institution. And what I should say, when QA comes to visit a university, what it's not is a bunch of know-it-all inspectors. What we do is put together teams of academics from different universities with knowledge and experience of higher education and the student. Because every one of our review teams, there is a student, and they come and visit and talk to the institution, read up on the institution's submissions, and come out at the end of the day with a judgment. So that's an important part of what we do, is we involve you and the potential for you to be involved in helping your own institution improve. We've also got students embedded in our own organisation. We have 2 of our board members are students. We have a student advisory committee. I mentioned every big strategic decision in my organisation is discussed through that student advisory committee. Because ultimately what we do is to benefit the students and society in this country. We also, to support people like yourself, we have an annual conference called Quality Matters for student reps to get involved and to come and learn from their peers from across the country. And we also have one called Developing Student Engagement, which is about staff who support student officers. We have developed one of the things we do, as well as we do assessments, we develop the frameworks for academic standards and quality across the UK. And they're embodied in a set of documents called the UK Quality Code for Higher Education. And chapter B5, why it's B5 I don't know, but it is on student engagement. It's guidance to institutions on how to involve students in their institution and to help them shape the quality of their own learning experience. It is an essential expectation of every university in this country, or of the 4 countries of the UK, that they engage students in developing their own learning experiences. We also support lead student representatives. Every time we have a review of an institution, we ask the institution or the student body, student union, to appoint a lead student representative, and their role is to make sure that students get direct involvement in QA review processes, and the review team has wider access to student points of view. Now, a long time ago, one of my former bosses told the story of student engagement in our reviews in the early days. And the team met with this group of students, and there was one guy who was really, really outspoken. He was telling them as it is, and at the end of it, and my colleague said to him, "That's unusual. This is in the 1990s. You were very frank. Normally, the students we meet have been well trained by the university, and they know the strategic plan, and they're in tune." And the guy said, "Oh, I just walked by and saw a room with some sandwiches in it, thought I'd come in for something to eat." They met another student, a postgraduate student. It's unusual to meet a part-time postgraduate student in the reviews, and this woman was really well informed again, really good discussion. She said, "Hey, what is it you do then for your day job?" "Oh, I'm the Vice-Chancellor's personal assistant." Things have moved a long way. We've got meetings like this that happen in every university in the country. We've got almost every institution, I would say, treats what you think and what you say very seriously. We work with a number now of, higher education in the UK has devolved. So the Westminster government only decides policy for England. The Senate here decides Welsh policy, the Scottish Parliament and the Northern Ireland Assembly. So we have organisations, we work with the National Youth Students, we work with the Student Engagement Partnership in England, Student Participation and Quality Scotland, and also the WISE in Wales, the Wales Initiative for Student Engagement, which I'm rather proud of, that I called the first meeting, which eventually led to the establishment of that organisation. I persuaded the Welsh Funding Council, NUS Wales, and Universities Wales to come together at a meeting in Cardiff to establish a programme of student engagement here. And so we advocate externally for student engagement in the quality procedures of your institution, in the developing quality and standards of teaching and learning, and also of assessment practices. So I'm rather pleased, and it's not about personal pleased, it's about the difference that my colleagues and my organisation has made in putting students at the heart of our work over the last 10 to 15 years. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our work here in Wales. We are on the WISE Wales steering group. If you've not heard about it, the officers, I'm sure, can tell you. We're a critical friend supporting their work on furthering student engagement. We're currently rolling out a new system of quality enhancement review. It's quality improvement review for the Welsh higher education sector, a part of which we will listen to the different voices and experiences of a wide range of students, each provider being reviewed. Now, that's where you come in. Your last review of this institution was very positive, but in the academic year 1920, we will visit the Cardiff Metropolitan University, and as part of that, there will be opportunity for the Students' Union, student reps to engage, to prepare a submission, and to meet our team. So it might seem a long time away, but some of you will probably still be engaged in the structures and have an opportunity to start the preparations. And for the first time, the lead student representative for the reviews, for the institution being reviewed, will be able to observe all review meetings between us and the provider. No private meetings, we observe all of the meetings, not just those involving students. That's a radical change that we think helps increase the transparency to students, that this is a robust and a confident process. And the reason we moved, I mentioned it's called Quality Enhancement Review. is because successively institutions in Wales have shown they can comply with the minimum. They can show that they can meet the standards. This is about strategically helping institutions get better. So it should help in the university with its own strategy, with the student union, with its strategy, and us in reassuring the public that this is a well-run institution. And I wanted to finish off on the importance of the student voice in the future. You may not follow all, some of us have to. There's been a huge amount of change in higher education policy across the UK in recent times. Higher education has been in the public eye and in the media spotlight in the past year with issues like tuition fees, value for money for students, and in some institutions, vice-chancellor's pay, to name a few. With so much going on and so much debate, having a strong student voice is as important as ever. Indeed, I've heard the Vice President of the National Union of Students is on our board, and he said that these discussions about pay are a distraction from real issues about value and quality. The student voice is critical in all of these debates, which is why it's great to be here today and to see that staff and students can come together to talk about how you can work in partnership in the future. We are in the process of working with others to redevelop the UK quality codes for higher education. There has been an argument that we should drop the elements of that in relation to student engagement out of the minimum baseline requirements. There is equally as powerful an argument that it should remain, and I certainly will be one that will continue to argue that. We have a new body being created in England. You wouldn't have heard of it until you'd heard of Toby Young over New Year, called the Office for Students. And there's some more debate at the moment about whether more needs to be done to ensure that students are truly engaged in its work and they have a real voice in the future. That debate will become as equally important in Wales with the implementation of a proposal to create what's going to be called the Tertiary Education and Research Council for Wales. It would be equally important that in Wales you ensure that the student voice is in that system. In Scotland, there's recently been a review as well in the quality system, and we've worked with NUS Scotland, the Student Participation Quality Scotland, to improve that and keep that in the forefront. So it's really interesting that at a time when there is radical reform of higher education on the table in almost all parts of the UK, that there should be no question of the student voice being diminished. And people like you coming here today and the things you do every day and talking to your fellow students, of feeding back their views, of taking up their issues, of feeding back to them what the institution's doing well, is an invaluable place and piece of UK higher education. Recently, some academics in Australia, about 2 years ago, published a research paper in which they described student engagement in the UK and in the quality system in the UK as extraordinary. We actually are the most advanced in the world in what we are doing in engaging students in higher education, but it can always get better. So make sure when you feed in today that you tell your colleagues in the Students' Union and in the institution what you'd like to see to make this system work as well as it possibly can. And I'm happy to answer questions if there's time. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to it.